Okay, folks, here we go.
Guys, here we go. Let's have a good show.
1B, stand by. Okay,
Yeah.
gas that.
Yeah,
Take it.
take it at midfield.
Okay,
Just go right now. Go to camera 3. 3. Go to the get perfect, just like that.
I'll just go ahead.
Yeah, graphics 2 is going to be up for the first. Okay.
Take
Go right now. Go to camera 3. Go. Yep. Go to the get perfect, just like that. No music.
I'm going to hand to Q, Sophie.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it.
On radio in the Canal Zone.
All right, guys, mic check.
Go ready.
Okay, Ricky, mic.
Yep, I am ready.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Willie, mic check.
Yep, let's go.
1B, stand by.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Okay, and go for it, guys.
So we're live, and only one person on the scene tonight. Ricky is tied up tonight. He's got family in town, and he's got other things going on. So enjoy disfruta la familia, Ricky. We'll have him back again next week. So kind of strange to be doing this solo tonight, but won't be solo for too long, of course. Dave Dahlstrom's going to be joining us. It is the first of the month. So, but anyhow, Friday night, happy hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. It's October 4th. Can't believe it's already October. But glad to see everybody here. Glad to have everybody on tonight. Of course, as typical, now I'm going to try and fill in for Ricky here. Now he's got his spiel here, you know, born and raised in the Canal Zone, all that good stuff. But nonetheless, here we are again, just getting together and talking about what we do at the Balboa Yacht Club on Friday nights and hang out and reminisce. In this case, we reminisce about the days back in the zone, and so. As we normally do, we're going to have Dave Dahlstrom on the beginning of the month talking about some Canal history. A little bit different tonight. It's going to go back to some Panama history in a sense because we're right around the corner from Columbus Day, and so Dave won't be on, of course, next week, so we're going to bring that up this week instead. And a couple other things. We are going to do Ricky's not here to do his Bochinche segment, but we'll certainly at least do the birthdays. We always want to recognize those. But next week, of course, Rick will be back and take care of his Bochinche segment, which he loves, and quite frankly, a lot of people do as well. We get a lot of good reviews on it. But nonetheless, welcome everybody. Glad to have you guys on. Bear with me if we're on a new system, so if some things come across a little wonky, let us know. But let me look at something here because I don't. Let me know if anybody is seeing our signal because I'm looking on my phone and I don't see the show on here. So somebody does say we're live. Bear with me just a second, guys. I'm trying to take a look at something here. Probably not when we wanted to go solo tonight, but nonetheless, here we are. We'll get it figured out here. I just don't see any activity on my slide there. I do see someone on YouTube. Okay, so it says there are some people on YouTube. I just don't see it on my YouTube feed. I'm not sure why, but nonetheless, let me. If somebody could throw something in the chat, and hopefully I can see it, but. Okay, so do you see some more people? Anyway, so let's move forward. Yeah, there it is. Okay, cool. Thank you, Yvonne. Appreciate it. So nonetheless, let's go ahead and move along here. It is going to be, again, a little wonky here on the show, but we'll get Dave on here later on tonight. In the meantime, though, we'll just go straight to the birthdays here and celebrate the birthdays like we always do every week. Class of 81, you're not going to get your typical Ricky priority, but we'll just go ahead and mention the names out there. So this week, celebrating birthdays that we definitely want to recognize. Richard MacArthur is celebrating a birthday. Glad to see that. Saw Richard at the reunion. He was good to see him. Richard was my next door neighbor when I was like 5 or 6 years old. Of course, he was older than I was. We didn't hang out. If anything, I knew Ruthie a little bit, but not Richard. But nonetheless, happy birthday, Richard. Next week we have a guest coming on from the from the Panama Motocross Adventures, Jerry Curtis, and Jerry had his birthday this week, so happy birthday to you, Jerry. Ilka Martin was celebrating a birthday this week. Love to celebrate with Ilka there. Kathleen Sears, John Hutt. John Hutt was a neighbor of mine in Balboa or off of Amador Road way back in the day. Kelly Hunt. Kelly Hunt has a birthday this week as well. Joanne Chiatti. She's a Panamanian but went to BHS. Chris Welch is celebrating this week as well. Linda Smith is celebrating. Mike Geddes. Mike Geddes, I think, is back in the U.S. I know for a while there he was living in, I believe he was in Singapore, which is pretty cool. Laura Kosick, someone we've had on the show a lot and watching the show. She's had a birthday this week. Happy birthday, Laura. Lee Engelkey is celebrating a birthday. Becky Lavelle and Pat Smith. So quite a few birthdays. September birthdays and early October birthdays are pretty cool. And again, anybody that we don't mention, happy birthday to you. We don't intentionally mean not to mention somebody, but nonetheless, thanks again for celebrating your birthdays and putting them on there where we can get to everybody see them. Happy birthday. And that's our happy birthday Murga song. That's thanks to Dave Dahlstrom. That Murga band actually sang or played that happy birthday for Dave at I believe it was at one of the reunions. But he sent it to me. He goes, "Here, this is a good birthday song for you guys to use." And absolutely it is. So thank you for that, Dave. And we'll certainly chat about it a little bit when you come on here later on. But nonetheless, again, anybody that we miss, we don't do it intentionally. But happy birthday to everybody out there. And now, moving along, want to talk about, again, one of the things that we always bring up here, which is the importance of the Pan Canal Society, right? And what they do for us and why it's so important to support them. You know, the society does a lot for us here. You know, it really keeps this Canal Zone memory and this Canal Zone legacy going. You know, the reunion, of course, is amazing. The Canal record, which I just got mine today, this latest one. And Carl Orvis, congrats. I'm still going to get you on here to do an interview with the new president of the Pan Canal Society. So good luck to you, Carl, with everything you've got to do. I know you've got your hands full with running the society because these guys do a lot of work for the Zonians, right? They again, in addition to the reunion and putting it this great publication, they keep us informed of a lot of things, right? They keep us together. They help us out with a lot of legislative things that impact, you know, retirees, a lot of federal government retirees. And, you know, and then again, they have that partnership with the Canal Museum Collection, which really helps to keep this legacy alive and keeps this really special story that was the Canal Zone going so that we can share it with others later on, you know, after we're no longer around, because obviously, we know Zonians are a limited number there, but nonetheless, so, you know, the society is important to support them, right? All the things that they do, these things are all possible through memberships and donations. And so the primary way of supporting the society, though, is get that membership, right? It's $50 a year. The Governor's Club is $250. It's good for 5 years. Get a couple other benefits with that, but you know, it's $50, right? It's not asking a lot, but it truly is something that you know, in today's world, we're talking about, you know, again, $50 for Christmas for a birthday gift for somebody is about what you're going to spend anyway, right? And if it's a Zonian family member or friend, get them a membership to the society, right? If it's your own membership that you're going to renew, because obviously it's coming up in January here, we're all going to renew our memberships, go ahead and use this gift program. If you haven't renewed in a while, or you've never renewed, or you've never signed up, make sure that you do it through this program, because they're going to waive your processing fee. So that'll save you $10. And again, you go to Pan Canal Society's website or give them a call. Let them know that you want to participate with the Happy Hour at the Balboa Yacht Club program, so they'll waive that fee for you. And again, our goal is to have 100 memberships in 100 days. And we're certainly well into those 100 days now. We're now in the month of October, so we're getting into that holiday season, right? So give that gift of a membership or renew your own membership and use this program so we can, you know, help boost those numbers. We saw in in the Facebook Society page, there's about 6,000 members on there. Granted, there's some people on there that probably are not Zonians, and there's some spammers and whatnot, but there's a lot of people on there that are Zonians that are not members of the society. If we could get half that number in there, that's going to raise huge funds to help keep this thing going. So help out, get involved, and give the gift of a membership. We've got on the screen here a lot of our sponsors that are helping push this because it's important to them as well. And these guys are all Zonian-owned businesses there. So, we definitely thank them for helping out there. Howler Monkey Sauce, Kelly Morris with Compass, Kelly Morris and her daughter Rachel Morris, both very successful realtors here in West Central Florida with Compass Realty. Reach out to them and talk to them. If you're looking for something in Panama, they're your gateway to a lot of realtors in Panama. Al Sprague Art, those guys have been on the show a long time. They help us out quite a bit. And Al Sprague really keeps that Panama story going, right? It's an important story. It's one that really brings out the essence of what it was like growing up, not just in the Canal Zone, but in Panama. A lot of his artwork there is it's iconic, and it's world famous certainly. But these guys also offer, tote bags, drinking loans, which by the way, no cheers here without Ricky, but nonetheless, we'll try it ourselves. But they've got a great collection of Al Sprague art, not just in paintings, but of course they've got those original paintings, which you definitely want to collect. Art is always a great investment, and this guy's world renowned. So definitely check them out. Again, we're in that holiday season, so if you're looking to stock up on some Al Sprague art, definitely reach out to them at Panama Arts. Panama Motocross Adventures, Jerry Curtis's outfit, they're going to be on next week. That's going to be a really cool show talking about what they've got coming up because they got another big event, Ocean to Ocean. Really well set up program. It's a motocross, both motorcycles and four-wheelers. Beginners through expert. You don't have to be a renowned expert in motocross. Sorry, my dog's barking. But they'll be on next week to tell us about that, what they've got going on, and show us some footage from the previous adventures. And it's really become a big event. And Jerry, of course, has been an amazing motocross rider for so many years, and he's still doing that here in Florida. He tore up Panama and he dominated Panama, and now he comes here to Florida and dominates here as well. So it's going to be fun to have him on again. And again, happy birthday to you, Jerry. Beacon Solar, that's Larry Cicero's outfit. These guys are up in the Northeast. They're getting ready to come down here to Florida, and they've got some really amazing solar panel programs, both commercial and private, and they've got some really good programs that they've been setting up there in Massachusetts and in Connecticut, in those areas where it's a really good investment for whoever puts that in, because in a lot of opportunities you can make money, especially on the commercial end, right? Where a property puts these in, and the incentive is that they're going to make money off this as opposed to it being an expense. So look forward to hearing more on that. He's going to join us here in a couple of weeks and talk about what they have going on and what they're going to do to try and get involved here as well in Florida. And of course, Andrew Eftimitis, who was on last week with Cascadas Lodge and his C Panama, again spelled SEA Panama. They've been a help to the show for a long time. And then, of course, he has his show, his Panama Canal Report show every couple of months. So definitely check those guys out. If you're going to the Canal Zone reunion in January, there may be still room there, so give them a call. And again, they've got those amazing boat charters. They're going to start doing weekend charters to Contadora that are scheduled service now, which will be fun if you want to go and spend a day in Contadora or a weekend. You can count on Captain Andrew Eftimitis and his group at Sea Panama to take care of that for you. So definitely stay tuned there. But anyhow, and then of course, Comfish Panama. That's a big anchor sponsor of ours. Kerry Leggett and Comfish Panama has really stepped up to help us out here a lot, and they're big fans of the show and big fans of what we're doing to grow that Panama Canal Society membership. So if you're looking for an amazing fishing charter down in Panama, these guys have some really awesome trips. They are booked up a lot, so you definitely have to maybe you can get some of that Zonian Palanca to help you get some room in there, but a really good outfit. They do a lot of good work there. So nonetheless, anyhow, let's move forward here. with lately we've been, we focus a lot on the Canal Zone, of course. The Canal Zone is what this show is all about. That's that legacy that we have here. But as we've learned, being online, we stream to YouTube, and we started picking up a lot of audience from Panama itself, not just from the zone. And it's really cool to see, and a lot of them enjoy, what we're bringing to the table as far as a lot of the history of the zone and just talking about our culture. In fact, a lot of times just as simple as saying hello to everybody and seeing what's going on. And so we've wanted to start adding some more Panama flavor to the show and start talking a little bit more about Panama as well. For some of us like myself and Ricky when he's on, we have Panamanian families as well. So, Panama was not just, somewhere where the zone was for us. It was our family and culture as well. So it's fun to bring some of that back and learn some of that as well. So we have this segment now called Made in Panama. And Historias del Istmo. And so let's go ahead and kick that off here and learn a couple other things about Panama that are just kind of fun. All right, so there we go. So we'll switch gears now and focus a little bit on Panama and some of the history there and whatnot. A couple of weeks ago, we did that province quiz, which is kind of fun, especially learning about the different flags and the provinces, which, like I said prior, when we grew up and when I remember going to St. Mary's, which we had a lot more Spanish involvement in St. Mary's than the Canal Zone schools did, but we knew of 9 provinces. They had the song from, I think it was Gago, the grocery store had that little commercial with everybody singing about all the 9 provinces. Turns out now they have quite a bit more provinces. So, Panama's, not just the zone has changed, Panama itself as a country has changed. So, but with that, let's move forward and learn a little bit more about one of the other provinces there. In this case, we're going to talk about Veraguas, right? Veraguas is, it was one of the provinces discovered a long time ago, which Dave's going to go over here in just a bit when he jumps on with this Panama history piece. But Veraguas is a unique province. It's been around for a long time. It was one of the first places that Europeans discovered in that Isthmus of Panama area. It's also the only province that touches both the Atlantic and Pacific. Right? If you look on the map there, on the eastern border near Colombia, you see Darien, and of course in the Pacific side it touches. But on the Atlantic, it just falls short because the sandblast, or what we used to know as a sandblast, we'll learn here, or we did the other day what it really is, that kind of cuts it off there. And on the far eastern border, that's actually land beyond that. It's Colombia. It's hard to see on that map. I probably should have used a better background, but it borders Colombia there, so it never touches the Atlantic Ocean. It only touches the Pacific. But back to Veraguas, they're actually on both the Atlantic and Pacific. And, of course, they have that very famous island there, which is used to be a prison, and now, of course, it's a tourist spot, but Coiba, right? So founded in the 1600s, capital is Santiago, which was, I think, founded in 1636 in the province of Veraguas, which back then was part of what they called Gran Colombia, and then it changed to the Republic of New Granada. But again, it's a place that had a lot of history. Columbus actually set foot there, and again, Dave's going to talk about that here shortly. Coiba, again, used to be a prison island. Now it's a national park. Interesting, it's the largest coral reef in the Pacific coast of the Americas. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. They have also that peninsula is called Azuero, which is I guess the western border of the Bay of Panama. You don't realize until you really start paying attention how big the Bay of Panama is, and it's pretty extensive. But the western border of it is that peninsula Azuero, and on the western part of that peninsula is where they have Veraguas touching the Pacific. And that little area there on the map that you see, that little bay area there, That's where a well-known surfing area or resort is, which is Catalina. It was a long way off back in the day to go out there. It was a good 6, 7, 8 hour drive to get out there. I'm sure it's probably much shorter now, but now that's a really really big beach resort. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe I'll speak out of turn there because when Jerry comes on next week, I think they're out in that region somewhere. They have a bed and breakfast where when you complete that ocean to ocean, you stop off in, I believe it's in an area there, but we'll find out for sure next week. But a couple other interesting things about Veraguas. Again, it's touches both coasts here. What else? What else is interesting to know about Veraguas? Otherwise, we'll just move along here. They got Coiba. We already talked about that. Yeah, you know what? It's there it is, Veraguas. North to south, Atlantic and Pacific. But just something fun to know. But anyhow, something more interesting here. Dave again is going to talk about, some of those early voyages of Columbus, in particular the ones through Panama, which are pretty extensive and some interesting information there that he's going to go over. But what we know about the history of Panama is going on to the Pacific side. Of course, after Columbus was, late 1400s and early 1500s when all that was going on. But much later now, Panama had been, part of this Grand Columbia, and this was where that gold trade that was coming now from the Pacific Ocean was going through Panama. That was the transit point. So, obvious reasons why later on in life the canal came to be there. But in that area there on the Pacific, of course, you had the old ruins of Panama City, right? And the reason that those are the old ruins, and as we talked about Ancon Hill last week, it was sacked by Henry Morgan, right? And we all have heard stories about how that occurred, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about, now. The story of Henry Morgan, not so much his history, but the history of the sacking of Panama. And then, of course, when Dave comes on, we're going to actually backtrack a little to go to the history of the discovery of that northern area. But Henry Morgan, of course, he's known as a pirate, but the truth is Henry Morgan was what is referred to as a privateer. Okay, and a privateer was actually hired by the British government to basically handle business for them in the Caribbean. Back in the 1670s, 1669 actually, the Spanish and the British were in heavy competition in the Caribbean, right? There's a lot of resources there, a lot of islands there where they were trying to establish themselves. There was, that big chase to start colonizing, the French, the Dutch, a lot of others were involved. But the primary players in the Caribbean were the British, the French, and the Spanish. And the Spanish decided to take on the British. And so in 1669, the Queen of Spain at that time ordered an attack to attack areas in the Caribbean. And so as a result, the British turn around and rather than go to war with these guys, head to head, they decided to hire not so uppity up gentlemen of the sea, right? They decided to go after and get pirates. These guys knew what they were doing. They were ruthless. They really made it worth their while to go out and attack. And best part about it is they had the safety of the protection of the British government. And so Henry Morgan was one of these privateers. And in 1670, he led about 1,200 men, boats and canoes and whatnot. They were going to go out and attack Panama City. 1,200 men, of course, back in those days, you didn't have ships nearly as big as you do now. So that was a pretty good size force that he had there, about 30 ships. And they sailed from the Caribbean towards Panama. Back in when you look in the history of Panama before the canal, we talk about the Chagres River. The Chagres River was, for all intents and purposes, was about a canal that went about halfway through the country. Okay, it started on the north there, Fort San Lorenzo, which is on the west bank of what is now the canal, and it would go down to an area right before what is now the Gatun Lakes, and But back then, of course, it kept going all the way through past what is now Gamboa, and it went upstream quite a bit. So that was a pretty good sized river, and it was heavily trafficked by indigenous people, and certainly, by explorers and obviously pirates as well. So these guys set forth, Henry Morgan and these guys set forth, landing in Fort San Lorenzo in that area. They actually took that area first, attacked there. They arrived in the mouth of the Chagres. Their first target was Fort San Lorenzo, which guarded the river's entrance, right? Remember, we talked about Bocas del Toro previously and why it was strategic. It was that ability to defend itself, right? Having land shaped a certain way that would force you to go within the line of fire of these forts was a very strategic place, and that's what the Chagres River had with Fort San Lorenzo. So they put on a siege for 2 days. Basically, they don't let anything in or out, and it forced them to go ahead and engage. A lot of losses to the Spanish. About 300 of them were stationed there, and the majority of them were killed. So they were overrun. So now they had a free run from there, and they, of course, went ahead and started to traverse through the Chagres River. Now, we learned from Dave Dahlstrom a couple of months ago that Ulysses Grant, before he was president, before he was general, way before the Civil War, had taken troops across the isthmus. And because of some shenanigans with the railroads, they actually decided to march, not realizing how treacherous that march was. And it turns out that they were repeating a mistake that Henry Morgan made. Fortunately, he had a big enough force that in spite of the problems of crossing that isthmus, they were able to get across and finally then be within sight of Panama, right? And so when they were ready to attack Panama, and this is again looking up a lot of information. Some you got to take things with a grain of salt. There's a lot of different takes on it, but we have when they prepared to battle, they would sound trumpets and drums and these kind of things, which would get their forces fired up, get excited, ready to go. And at the same time, they were trying to intimidate the Spanish, right? They also they used some local guides and started taking some alternate routes, right? The Spanish knew they were coming and they were setting up some ambush points, and they got around them. They finally got into the city. Again, very well calculated, in spite of the fact that these guys are pirates, and you assume pirates are just, crazy screaming banshees. They actually had a well-planned, well-thought-out a plan. They got around some ambush points. They did about a 2-hour battle when they finally got in the city. And despite the Spanish having a cavalry and everything, these guys overcame. They finally able to take them down. And they were ruthless. I mean, they didn't hardly spare many people. Most of the soldiers that did survive ended up fleeing and probably were succumbed to the jungles and whatnot eventually. But it was brutal. I mean, these guys were pirates. These guys were going after money, and they were bloodthirsty, and that was kind of the sign of the times back then anyway. But they burned that entire city. They wreaked havoc on that entire city, and of course we've heard the stories of the golden altar, that it was painted black or whatever so that they wouldn't see that was a big piece of gold. But interesting thing about this, the excitement for these guys to do this, all these pirates to join forces. 1,200 people is a lot of people. That's quite a few ships that they're commanding. This is not just some one band of pirates there. And so they're going to split the spoils. It turns out they didn't get as much as they wanted. Turns out they didn't get paid a lot. And Henry Morgan went back to prior to Panama. He attacked a colony of the Spanish called Jamaica. We always assumed Jamaica was British, but for a long time it was Spanish. And he attacked it and took those people down and took it over, and that became a British colony. And then from there, they started launching the other attacks, throughout the region and whatnot, and eventually into Panama. So when he finished the attack on Panama and defeated the Spanish, they returned to Jamaica. Well, you got to think in the 1600s, you don't have the internet, you don't have anything of any kind of fast communication. And as luck would have it, the Spanish and the English had signed a peace treaty. in between the time that he had left to go and attack Panama, and by the time it all got settled down, they recovered and then went back to Jamaica. Enough time had expired that this had taken place. So when he returned to Jamaica, they arrested him because he attacked now a country they had a treaty with. And so they ended up taking him back to England, and the king had been the one that ordered him arrested. And then when he returned, they sorted things out, and then he was released, and then he was actually knighted. So interesting stories of Henry Morgan there. But if you drink Captain Morgan, which I don't, this is not Captain Morgan, but cheers. Now you know kind of how Henry Morgan ended up going after Panama City and what took place there. So anyhow, so I thought that was kind of interesting to share that and talk about Henry Morgan and what he was able to do. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and just keep moving along. Again, show's a little bit different tonight. Ricky's not here. It's funny how you realize that how much both of us work together on the show, and so again, he had some family things to do. He had family in town or whatever. So enjoy the family time, but it is much harder to run this show solo. I'll be honest about that. So nonetheless, let's go ahead and get ready to bring Dave on and talk again about the history in Panama there. Let me cue something up here again. Bear with me just a moment, everybody. But yep, there he is. So without further ado, then Dave Dahlstrom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. How you doing?
Doing good. A little flying solo here, so things are a little bit strange. Plus, it's a brand new platform. I'm still trying to figure things out, so it'll be a little bit wonky, but we'll get it figured out nonetheless. So, but
yeah, okay. Well, while we're wonking, I can't see the screen.
Okay, yeah, it's just okay. Yeah, let me add something here. Then bear with me. There, but
and I've got you on the YouTube, but it's about 15 seconds behind. So there we go.
Okay, so you're all right. And what do you see now? A black screen with a white little circle, like a screen thing on it?
Well, I can see it, but it's kind of grayed out.
Yep. Okay. So let me do this. Try something else here. There we go. That's why I had to share the screen. Okay, how about now?
I can see it, but it's thumbnail.
Okay. So that should be the history of the canal zone in Panama. Is that what you see?
I see that, but it's a thumbnail size.
It's a thumbnail size.
Yeah, just like our icons.
Well, that's strange. Because I'm showing it on full screen on mine.
All right. Let
me look at something here. Sorry, guys. We're in a new system here, and it's a little wonky.
I got it. I tapped it on the screen, and it's coming up a little larger.
Okay. Well, if somebody in the chat can throw out there and let us know what you see out there.
Now I got it.
Okay. Cool. Perfect.
All right.
So anyway, like I said earlier, Dave. We've been doing canal history, canal zone construction, but next week is October 11th. It's Columbus Day is that weekend, and so it's a week after Dave's normally on here. But as our historian, he's going to talk about that among other things. So without further ado, let's just kind of talk about what you're going to be mentioning here. And some of these guys we're not going to be able to cover tonight, but we'll definitely get to them because Dave's got a lot of really cool stuff on this slide deck.
We're going to add a little bit of Panama history. This is Columbus Day is this month, so I thought I'd talk about Columbus. My wife and I just got back from a trip to Bocas del Toro, and we stayed on Isla Colón, and that got me thinking about Columbus's visit. And so I did a bunch of research on that, and it's a really interesting story, and it's part of the Panama history that I didn't really know. So I'm going to share some of that with you today. I'm also going to add another segment. I'll I'll try to add this in. I think it's pretty fun. It's called Famous Zonians,
Yeah.
and so I'm gonna talk about some Zonians and do a little quiz, see if you know who you can guess who these people are. And then
And I
one
couldn't
of
guess
them,
any of them last night when we were talking about it.
yeah,
I had no clue.
and one of them was in a in I'll just wait till we get to it,
There you go.
but it's a good theme for this month.
Yeah, certainly is.
So as we see on this list, we'll talk about Christopher Columbus, but we're going to skip over Balboa and some of the other stuff. We won't probably have time for that. So
Yep.
So we'll go on. So the first thing we're going to start is called Famous Zonians, and my first question I have for you is, which Zonian appears on U.S. currency? We'll give you a few seconds to think about that. If you think you know, type it in the chat. We're not going to wait too long for you to guess. So
or Google it.
Move this along. So Will didn't know this last night.
No, I had no idea.
But so we'll just go ahead and move on to the next one. So Dwight D. Eisenhower, President Eisenhower was a Zonian, and we'll get into how he was a Zonian.
Yeah, he had quite a history. You know,
He
we
had
know him
quite a history.
from World War II, but turns out, you know, through our historian, non-historian Dave Dahlstrom doing his research that, like a lot of famous people, there's a connection there.
Yeah. So so Eisenhower actually appears on a silver dollar, and
Yep.
it came out in 1971. And you guys, you probably have one of these. I have a bunch of them saved up from back when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But it was 1971. It was the first dollar that had been used in about a year. And of course, we probably remember the Susan B. Anthony dollars that everyone hated, and Sacagawea dollars.
Right.
But Ike was the first one to be made into a dollar in quite some time. But Ike was a Zonian.
Well, at least they had enough sense with this one to make it a large one, because
Yeah.
the other ones, I think a lot of people lost them in machines, throwing them in as quarters.
Right.
You know,
And
so
it did change over the year. There was more silver in the early ones, and then they changed the metal component, so they became different materials. So some were more valuable than the others. And on
Yeah.
the back of them, they made two versions. Go back to they made two versions of this coin. They had the regular one, which had 1971 was, or 69 was Apollo 11.
Sure.
And so that was a really big thing. So when they made this dollar, they commemorated that event with a replica of the Apollo 11 patch,
Sure.
with the eagle landing on the moon, and then it's the Earthrise in the background.
Which was the name of the lunar lander, was the eagle. Remember the famous
Eagle,
words,
right.
the eagle has landed.
The eagle has landed, exactly. But
Right.
in 1976, bicentennial, they came out with bicentennial edition with the Liberty Bell on it.
Right on.
So-
Right on. That
so
was
there's
that
two-
was really
there's two
cool.
ones.
Do you guys remember the bicentennial? I mean, the parades and
Mhm.
and all the triangle hats. They were, I
Right.
guess all the toy stores had them, so everybody had
Yeah.
those in the zone. That was kind of cool. The bicentennial thing. That was a big
Yeah,
deal.
we
man.
dressed up like colonial
Yeah,
patriots and wore the hat. And
yeah, that was
and-
fun, man.
yeah,
That was.
I remember
fun.
it was Mrs. Sprague was our den leader. And we,
Oh, right
we
on.
did that, yeah.
Yeah, I think we did that with Mrs. DeStafano as well.
Mhm.
That was our Cub Scout
Right.
leader. But
So okay, let's go on the next one.
so yeah, let's figure out the zoning connection here.
Yeah. All right. So Eisenhower was stationed in Camp Elliott, which was also known as Camp Gaillard. Later on in 1922, it had a name change, and that's about the time that Eisenhower arrived there, 1922 to 1924.
Okay.
And he was an executive assistant to a general by the name of Fox, who was big in World War I, worked with General Pershing and stuff. But he was an assistant for them, and he spent a lot of time dealing with like diplomacy with the Panamanian government. So
Interesting.
he was there for 2 years, and was like a liaison. So he got to be very well versed in Panamanian culture,
Sure.
history, and politics. And so Camp Elliott, was up on a rise, and then they changed it to Camp Galliard later on. And that Camp Elliott was located. You going to zoom in on this, Will? Or
Yeah, well,
it was
there's two images. There's
okay.
one
All
zoomed
right.
in.
It's just south of Gamboa, so Bassa Bispo area. If you're familiar with the old Canal Town areas, it would be on the west bank of there, basically across the canal from where the Gamboa Penitentiary was, and that was a place that was called Camp Elliott, and then they changed the name to Camp Gaillard. So Eisenhower was there for 2 years, and so he was officially a Zonian. He lived and worked in the Canal Zone.
Very cool.
And
Very
he
cool.
appears on U.S. currency.
Yep.
And so this is a picture of Ike. He's the one circle there in the field. They're doing some field exercises, and one of the folks in the image there on the horse is this General Fox Connor, who's very famous in his own right, but didn't appear on any currency.
Yeah, not like Ike.
And then you can see the camp is up on the rise, up on the top of the hill.
Okay, yeah, that's a different angle from the previous photo.
Right.
Interesting.
And then in 1946, after World War II, he became the chief of staff for the Army, and he made a visit to Panama, basically to thank them for their involvement and support during World War II. And here he is. It was like the 12th or 13th of August that he came in 1946. He was there for 2 days. And this, I believe, was the mayor of Panama, I believe.
Well, as you mentioned, when he was there previously, he did a lot of liaison work with the Panamanians. So
Right.
there was a 2-year connection there anyway, more than just
Right.
any other visit.
Right. Yeah. So I would suspect that this was strategic, why he went there. There were probably some other political issues going on.
Certainly.
He was there probably to smooth some wrinkles out. Would be my thought.
Well, the canal proved quite valuable in World War II.
Yeah. So so he made several trips to the Canal Zone, and this is one of them. And also either that day or the next day, traveling. He's wearing different clothes, so obviously it's not the same time. And he was there 2 days. There are photos of Ike in front of the administration building, the whole big crowd, greeting him and stuff. But in this particular picture, he's in a car with gentleman. Last name is Ramon, who was in the military, Panamanian military at the time, and in 1953, I believe, he became president of Panama.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole story that we'll get into that later on when we talk about the 1955 treaty. But those two they had met before, and they came back and negotiated a treaty, and things really changed after that.
Yeah, that blew my mind when you told me that last night. It really changed my perception of some things.
So these guys knew each other. They had a past, they had a history, they knew each other. And Ike was a Zonian. He lived there. He knew it. Not many presidents had that experience.
Certainly.
So
it's interesting that that's two presidents now that have had a connection with Panama, and therefore it influenced their decision making with regards to Panama.
Absolutely right. Grant thought it was impossible to do. But when Ike was down there, he was also awarded the Order of Vasco Núñez de Balboa, which I had never heard of before. But it's a prestigious honor of Panamanian government to award somebody, and it's quite a medal to see this thing. And so our own Ike Eisenhower was awarded that.
That's cool. And it says there, if you can't read it on the screen, guys, it's the order awarded for distinguished diplomatic services and contributions to international relations between Panama and other states. That's pretty cool. So you made a significant contribution to Panama in an international fashion, which he certainly did with a lot of people.
And doing more research, you might find out that he might have had a lot more involvement in Panama over the years that I just don't know about. But
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. But you know, it's funny because I mean, certainly Eisenhower is recognized worldwide because this guy led the Allies in Europe. He was the top dog there. Everybody knew who Ike was. You know, he became president, and so he was known globally. And he obviously, having that role as the general, the top general, he was familiar with a lot of countries, a lot of diplomats, and yet Panama still was in a different realm, I think, for him than other places, and that's what seems to be unique with a lot of Americans that somehow Panama draws that connection. We certainly appreciate it and understand it, but it's more than just us.
We learned that about Gorgas too. I mean, and Panama became one of those places that he absolutely loved, and after World War
and
I,
he was
wanted
very
to go
world
back
renowned and traveled,
and live his life out there.
Yeah, for sure. It's
All right,
interesting that Panama has that connection.
Yeah, so this is just the back of it. It has the Isthmus of Panama on the back of the medal.
Yeah.
And so that's in the president's collection and in his library and
Oh, his library, right on. Yeah.
So
That's cool.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And Ike was also knighted. He was knighted by King George V. But here he is in a picture with Queen Elizabeth. I couldn't find any images of that for either event with him and Gorgas. Gorgas was knighted as well.
Interesting. And this one here is when he's president, so it's after the war.
Well, well, this photo is after the war.
Yeah,
but I
don't think you'd be knighted as president. I think that probably there'd be a bit of an issue.
Yeah,
with
I think it was after World War II. And,
right.
And
sure. Kind of their thank you for helping England and whatnot.
Right. So it's a very rare honor for
a
a non-American to be knighted, and we have 2 Zonians that have been knighted.
Right on. How about that, huh? Yeah. Look at that.
And Eisenhower was the Supreme Allied Commander, and was basically was in charge of the D-Day Normandy invasion, Operation Overlord, and also in charge of all the European war operations. He also served in North Africa.
Oh yeah,
and stuff. And so, like you said, he was the man. And so he not many people had the stature that he had, and it probably was one of the reasons why he was elected as president.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that he reached the pinnacle in both of those fields, right? In government, president, you don't go higher than that, and in the military, you don't go higher than Supreme Allied Commander, not just any general, but the top general. And it's interesting. And there was only 2 for what it's worth. There was only 2 5-star generals that we've had. He was one of them, and the other one was Omar Bradley, who was the last one to die. He died in the mid 70s, I think. He was the last 5-star. 5-star generals can only be appointed by Congress. The military rank goes up to 4-star, and then 5-star in certain times of need or war, Congress will appoint that. But he was one of them, so he's definitely quite the guy, and a Zonian. So hail to that. Salute to Ike,
yes,
Ike the Zonian.
Thank you, sir. All right, so the next one. So if you have your Mike Eisenhower silver dollar, look for your 1976 version, because someone on eBay is trying to sell them for $1,400 a piece. So
wow.
Seems like it's some valuable currency. It's a pretty good rate of return if you paid $1 for it back in '76.
1,400% return. It's pretty darn good.
I don't know if you can get that or not, but I guess it's just the Zonian name on there makes the value go up.
I would think so. Makes sense to me. That would certainly be the way of doing it.
All right, so it's Halloween time. It's October 31st. Halloween's in the air. Mm-hmm. I'm already drinking my. Can you see me in there?
Go to the other side. There you go.
It's happy Spocktober and happy Halloween. So our next famous Zonian, which Zonian appeared in the movie The Funhouse in 1981.
The Funhouse.
Anyone see that movie?
1981. And the poster might give you a clue.
Yeah. I actually saw this movie in Obarrio, the movie theater. I went there not knowing until I saw the credits roll up. And I was taken aback.
Well, yeah, you absolutely, from what you told me yesterday.
I know that person. Sure. I know that person. Anyone else know who it is? Any guesses?
Yeah, throw in the chat real quick if you know who this was in that movie.
So The Funhouse, 1981. Got the next one. All right. Did anyone recognize this picture of her? Or can read fine print?
Yep.
So she was one of the lead characters in this movie. It was a scary movie back in those '80s. They, the Friday the 13th and all that stuff. They were coming
Yep.
out.
That's when it started.
The big
See,
scary movies coming out. This was one of those. So let's
so
go on to the next one.
so Largo Woodruff is a
Yeah.
Zonian, and she was a next door neighbor of Dave's.
Next door, right next door,
How about that?
2268A Car Street.
So imagine Dave's at the movies there at El Barrio. He's watching the movie, and all of a sudden he's like, "Wait a minute, what?" And there she is on the screen.
We lived next to the Woodruffs. Woody Woodruff was he was a music teacher at Corundu Junior High, and his wife, she taught piano and did other things. But when I was a youngster, I moved there when I was 5, and so she was probably like 10 years older than me. So she was probably 15. Used to go over the house and do piano lessons, and then of course when I went to Corundu Junior High, my band teacher was Mr. Woodruff, the next door neighbor. So I always had to come home and practice because he could tell whether I was practicing or not. Right.
Right.
So,
That's
he was a good guy. Had him for homeroom and all that stuff. But I remember Largo when I was a young kid, and when you see the name come across
that's
the
amazing.
screen, that was pretty
That's so
amazing. And
cool.
I remember her mom invited us over because she had been making TV commercials, and she would get these like Super 8 films of her daughter in the TV commercial. So we'd go over there, and it would be, all right, here she is in the Tom McAn show commercial.
That's awesome.
Shoes. And then here she is in Almond Joy commercial. And so her mom they were just beaming,
That's so
Her mom
cool.
was out there doing it. So,
So there she is.
there she is. These are just some stills I took out of a trailer. You can find it on YouTube. The whole movie's on YouTube if you want to.
Oh, we're gonna have to watch it now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. That's what you got to do now. So, and she was also a hand model for Will and his little gremlin over there.
I love it. Absolutely.
So
Look
I
at that.
think-
Perfect.
I think
Perfect.
it was ad lib. Someone asked her what she thought about a certain president, and
Right.
I think that was her reaction, and just got caught on film.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's great because it's a perfect. You got to smile and everything. Love it. Fantastic.
All right. Well, she was also in a TV movie called Coward of the County. Kenny Rogers. You remember that song, Coward of the County?
That is so cool.
Country song.
Mhm.
It wasn't really my type of music, but knowing later on that she was going to be Becky in that show,
Right.
kinda like, all right, I gotta like it now. So,
But in SCN they played that stuff because you had a lot of
Yeah.
military that
Oh, yeah.
that was their music. So we
Kenny
certainly
Rogers
probably heard
show,
it.
Kenny
Yeah.
Rogers and the Rolling Edition or the New Edition or something like that.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and Hee Haw. I mean, we
Hee
all
Haw,
laughed about it, but we all watched Hee Haw.
I love T Haw, BR 549. But
Right?
but she was Becky in Kenny Rogers show, and that's on YouTube as well. You can go, you can watch that.
That is
on
so
there.
cool. That is so
Yeah.
cool. Let me see if we can get her on.
All right, and then Jimmy Buffett, not a Zonian, but he did have a cheeseburger in paradise at the Balboa Yacht Club.
I think we could vote
So I
on
think
that,
we're
making
giving
him
him
an honorary
honor-
Zonian.
Honorary Zonian. I
For
want to thank
sure.
Ralph for posting that picture on Facebook.
Yeah,
But,
for sure.
That makes me smile. I'll miss Jimmy. Loved his music.
Mhm.
He would make a great Zonian.
Yeah, for sure. His
All right.
his music was the embodiment of the
All
Canal
right.
Zone.
All right, so moving on. The next one. All right. Who watched the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High? I mean, that was a classic for mine. It's one of my favorite movies.
There's
Fun,
Spicoli
fun.
right there.
Spicoli. So this question is, can you name the Zonian rock star who cameoed in Fast Times? So this is a Zonian, a rock star Zonian that made a cameo in Fast Times. And
All right.
then
I mean, the only
bonus-
Zonian rock star that comes to mind to me is George Call and Aska.
yeah, but this is
So.
a female, and
Yep.
I'll give you a bonus if you can name her sister.
Ah, there we go. Anybody can come up with that one.
Come
Okay,
on,
anybody in the
and-
chat, throw it in there. I know there's a bit of a delay there, but
on,
so
come
you
on.
remember Fast Times at Ridgemont? That was a great flick. There's some iconic scenes in there, obviously, but yeah, that was one of those classic '80s films,
All
right?
right, so go on to the next. This is a little bit of a hint.
Okay.
So the famous rock star Zonian in Fast Times. I don't know if you can see Almost Famous is a hint as well. And I
Yeah.
can give you a double bonus if you can name her husband.
Oh boy. So we had a bonus for naming her sister, and then double bonus for naming her husband too.
Yep.
So,
All right.
so as somebody then that's a clue in itself because it's somebody that you should recognize the sister and recognize the husband. It's not just some random names.
Right.
Okay. All right.
All right. Let's go on. Let's reveal who it is.
Who is it?
All right. It's Nancy Wilson.
How about that? And so how's
All
Nancy
right.
Wilson a
Remember
Zonian?
Nancy Wilson in Fast Times, or she
Yeah.
pulls up next to Judd Reinwald. What's his name? Or Judge? He wasn't Henry Morgan.
No, he certainly wasn't.
He wasn't Henry Morgan, but he pulls up and he starts
right.
flirting with her and stuff.
Yeah,
but Nancy Williams made a cameo in that. And the Almost Famous reference is her husband, Cameron Crowe, who's a director, and so he directed Fast Times and also Maguire. What is it? Show Me the Money.
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. Right. So
okay, so as a director, he got her the gig on there to driving up in that scene.
Right. Exactly.
That's cool.
And then, of course, she's a member of Heart, the band Heart, and her sister Ann Wilson.
Yeah, certainly recognize them, but I think we're still wondering, well, how is she a Zonian?
Yeah, and she's a Zonian because you can look on the back of her guitar right here. It says United States Marine Corps. Her father was an embassy guard at Panama Embassy, and they lived in Farfan for about a year or two.
Okay, well,
probably about 1960. I can't find an exact date, but I've seen them talk about where they lived in Panama.
Okay, so they lived in the zone. So
they lived in the zone, Farfan.
If you lived in a zone, you're a Zonian.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that song Barracuda is probably my all-time favorite song. I like a lot of rock music, but that song, and now they're playing it on a Hyundai commercial. I just saw it the other day. It's, to me, that's a 12.
Nice. Right on. And that's before knowing that she was a Zonian.
Yeah, exactly.
So you almost made it a 12 and a half now.
There's must just be something about the water, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like it just connects with you. But
awesome.
and my aunt was her father was also embassy guard in the 60s, and I think they might have just passed. I can't remember. I can't think about it. But they weren't there at the same time, I don't think. Her father might have replaced
their paths must have crossed.
Yeah, right. And but she lived in Farfan as well.
Interesting.
And her dad was embassy. She graduated from Balboa High School.
Wow. So now is that still part of the same lineage that your other family history in the zone, and then just went into
she ended up marrying my mom's brother.
Okay, gotcha. Right on. That's awesome. What a great legacy you guys have.
Yeah, so the Hart sisters, they're Zonians.
Right on.
And Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I might add.
So we got Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We got former presidents. We got world famous doctors. You name it, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's that?
All right.
Absolutely.
So I hope you like that segment.
That was cool. That was interesting.
All right.
Yeah, because I would never have guessed either one of those. I tried and tried. I was thinking the dollar bill, the $5, 10, this, that, and the other. No, well, hold on. It's the big coin.
Yeah. Well, Grant's not a Zonian, but he's on some currency as well. He's on the $50 bill and he's on the $1 million bill.
Yes. Yeah, we saw that. Yeah, we'll have to pull that one up later on a trivia for you guys.
So there's some other trivia there. But so it's, Columbus Day coming up next week. And, I spent some time with my wife in Bocas de Toro. We had a fabulous time. That place is incredible. Isla Colón is beautiful. We went to some fabulous beaches and great food. We loved every minute of it. But, so it made me think about, why is this place called Colón? And looking on a map and stuff, there's obviously some references to Christopher Columbus.
Right.
So I thought I'm going to share some of that today. And he landed in Bocas de Toro somewhere between, I've seen written, it's either October 6th or October 16th.
Okay.
I don't know if someone's dropping a one or they don't know, but obviously there's a ship record that would know, but I can't confirm which one it is. So it's either going to be like on Monday, 125 years ago, or
Or a Wednesday.
in a week, yeah, or Wednesday. But some around this time,
Yeah.
he was also hanging out in Bocas area.
And this is 10 years after the initial discovery,
Right.
1492.
This was his fourth voyage.
Nice.
And we'll go on to the next one here. And we have this map. My dad had this map, and ever since I can remember as a kid, I have this hanging in my house in Maryland, and it's a beautiful map, and it had these. I don't know if you can even see it, but off the coast they had these dashed lines and white lines.
Yeah,
and on
it's
it.
on full
And-
screen here. Everybody's
and one part of it
comments
says
said it's on full screen.
part of it says that that Columbus had to flee because of hostile Indians in this area, and the other
Hostile
one,
Indians drove Columbus away from here.
yeah,
Yep.
and the other one says Rodrigo de Bastidas and basically his voyage over there. So we have two Spanish explorers, and Bastidas actually was the discoverer of Panama because he arrived in 1501.
Wow.
And Columbus arrived in 1502.
There you go.
And the interesting thing about it is that Bastidas had been on one of Columbus's earlier voyages as one of his sailors. And then, of course, when he went back to Spain, he went and got his own ship.
Yeah.
So we'll go on to the next one. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background history about Columbus. All right, so we're going on here. So this is a statue of Columbus that appears in Cologne. This is an old photograph in this building. I don't know if it's still there. It was de Lesseps, the French
Canal builder.
Canal builder. I think it was their Cologne office. De Lesseps didn't spend any time in Panama, but this I think was the headquarters office for the French company over on the Atlantic side.
Right.
And so this. At one point in time, when de Lesseps came, he asked that this statue be moved to this location. I'm not exactly sure where this building is. I don't believe it's still there anymore. I haven't found any documentation that shows me where exactly this was. But it looks like it's right near the water up front.
And it's interesting that the caption says that the statues of Columbus protecting an Indian girl. So he was apparently viewed as a protector.
Right. That's yeah. I don't know if you find anyone that would confirm that, but
okay. So maybe a little propaganda.
Yeah, a little bit, but let's go on to the next one. So this is a close up of that statue, and when I was looking at it, I was like, that is really amazing detail and quality. That is like museum quality.
Yeah.
Statue.
Very ornate for a bronze statue.
Yeah, you don't really see stuff that's that detailed, and so I started looking about the history of the statue, and there you can see the woman is like being comforted or
right,
acting like she's being protected or something like that. But,
smile.
But anyway, so I did some history on it. Well, here's that same statue, but that building in the background, it's like colorized, and they show it like a lot different texture than the other one. So
it sure does.
It looks like it, yeah. But it must have been a beautiful building. When you were there. So there's just something. The postcard, showing it. But that statue was a gift by the Empress of France, Eugenia de Montijo, in 1870.
Wow. Okay.
And she was the wife of Napoleon III, who was the grandson of Emperor Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte with
of course
with the hand in the
sure.
So she obviously had some money,
right?
And probably could hire some very, very, very finely skilled statue builders.
And apparently that was a French thing then to give gifts of statues.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Statue of Liberty.
Right. So that was a gift from this woman to there, and she sent it to Panama and to Cologne, And when they got it, they ended up leaving it in a rail yard.
And not exactly a nice looking rail yard
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, it was just like a piece of junk.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like
just put it
scrap
over
metal.
here. I don't know what the hell we're going to do with it. And that's where when the Lessups came down there, he said, "Hey, let me have that, put it in front of my
Sure.
headquarters."
You know, I was sitting out there looking like garbage. I'll put it over here.
Right, right. So they actually did clean it up. I'll talk about it in a little bit. But right now, the statue is at the end of the street in Cologne, and I
Okay.
I apologize if I butcher the name on this, but I think it's called Paseo de Centenario.
Paseo del Centenario.
The Centenario.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a boulevard that goes through the middle of Cologne, and it ends at the waterfront. And this is at the end of the waterfront, and that's where it is now.
Yep. Centenario is like 100th anniversary.
Right. And originally it ended up at that railroad yard, and then they moved it. I'll show you in a little bit later where it first was, and then the Lessups wanted it, and so they moved it to the Lessups. And the interesting part of that is that when the U.S. bought the canal rights from the French, they bought all of the property and belongings that went with that and the Panama Railroad.
Right.
And so the U.S. said, or Panama wanted that statue, and the U.S. said, "It's ours. We bought it. It's part of all the equipment."
It's like we bought the house and all the furniture.
It's an accessory item. You know why the U.S. didn't just say, it was a gift to Panama, you guys can have it? I don't know, but I think it's one of those things that I think starts creating those rifts.
Unnecessary friction.
Yeah. So what they
There's
decided
no
to
value
do,
to the U.S. They gained nothing with that.
Yeah. So what they ended up doing is they moved it, and I think it was to this like neutral spot. Like you can have, so it's like on the border
Okay.
of Canal Zone. I guess maybe we're not going to get to that other image of the. I don't think we are. But when the Panama Railroad was built, they built their first station there, and when they did the inauguration in 1852 or 1852, I guess they. Maybe I get it wrong, so we'll just skip that. I think I'm off on my dates on that. But they moved the statue around about four times, and now it's at the end of this boulevard. So if you go there, I'm making a beeline to see it. I do know at one point it was in front of the Hotel Washington, I believe, and I think I saw it when I went there. I went to Hotel Washington one time for a high school prom, actually. So
I wonder when they moved it over to this location here, because I
don't know exactly, but I thought it was interesting that it was given to them by an empress of France that was the granddaughter niece of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Right. What an interesting connection.
Yeah, who knew?
Right.
And then, so we're going to be talking about Columbus and coming over to Panama on his fourth voyage.
Okay.
And we all hear about, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria.
Right.
But you never hear of any other vessel name after that. And he had four trips, and so they had different names. So I went scouring, looking to see what the names of the ships were that when he came to Panama. And it was hard to do, but I came up with one ship was called the Capitana, the Gallego, or Gallega, Vizcaína, and the Santiago de Palos.
Right on.
So those are some things that we can do in the next Zonian trivia game.
Yeah, for sure.
John, if you're listening, who can name the four ships of Columbus? But that's really the Panamas, Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria.
Correct.
Right? Because Columbus came over the first time and he discovered the West Indies. He didn't discover America; he discovered the West Indies.
Correct.
And Panama wasn't discovered yet. So, and you could argue that in 1501, 1502, that either one of these guys were the discoverer of America, just not North America.
Right.
But,
exactly. And they're part of the same troop.
And you've probably heard Amerigo Vespucci was given that title, and there's some controversy of how he got that. Some map maker decided that's what he was going to call it, and
Well, that was a big claim to fame for a lot of people. So,
Right.
there was a lot of glory and a lot of wealth involved with
Right.
that. So, for somebody to alter a map, to change a date,
Mm-hmm.
to be ahead was not unheard of back then.
Sure.
There's no official record keeping you had today.
Right. Right. So I have this slide on there too, because when you see the ships, and they have all these flags on it, and on this ship on the right, you see at the top, there's a flag that's blowing, and you can't really tell what it is, but if you were to zoom in on it, it would be this flag on the left, and that is the flag of Christopher Columbus.
Those are his colors.
Right. So if you're looking at ships and it doesn't have this flag on it, it's not one of his.
There you go. There's your
So
clue.
this is a map of the 4 different voyages that Columbus made, and the 4th voyage was the last one in 1502. So 1492 was the first one, and he made 2 other voyages in between that. And at one point, after his 3rd voyage, he became the governor of Hispaniola,
Right.
and he was arrested, and he was sent back to Spain in shackles. And the new governor took all of his gold, because back then the Spanish government, they had a thing that we called it the Royal Fifth. And this is why these guys wanted to go on these voyages, is because, and I thought this was interesting, is that the explorers could keep 4/5 of their find, and they only had to give 1/5, the Royal Fifth, to the king and queen. So
Wow.
all these riches that they found, they could keep 4/5 of that.
Yeah.
And so Columbus was governor in Hispaniola. The new guy comes, they arrest him for the way he was treating people. That's all I'll say about that. And that governor kept all of his gold.
As the arresting officer, you get to keep it.
He had been a wealthy man until he got put in chains, and they took all that away from him.
Oof.
So when he got sent back to Spain, just like Morgan got sent back to go to
England.
trial.
Yeah.
And the king and queen let him go, and and then he's like, I got to go on another trip because I need some money, right? So,
Yeah.
so he did his fourth voyage, and this time he was actually looking for the narrow passage to get to the east. He'd heard about the narrow passage and stuff, and so like on his first voyage, or maybe it was his 3rd voyage actually. Some of actually it was some of the other Spanish explorers were crew members of his. So some of the other famous people that came to conquistadors in the New World, they traveled with Columbus on some of those ships. And on this 4th voyage, he had actually Bastidas was one of his sailors in previous visits. So Bastidas went back and got his own ship and came and did his own travels.
And beat him to the punch and got to Panama first.
And Balboa was served on some of these ships. And so these guys all kind of knew each other. It was a small, not that many ships and not that many people doing it, but there was some overlap in who was on that. So so the 4th voyage, he comes over, and he let's go to the next slide. We can see in here. So this 4th voyage, he comes in, stops in Hispaniola, and then Jamaica. It wasn't actually called Jamaica at the time. I can't remember what it was called. Like
it says
Cuba
Santiago. Santiago.
Cuba was called Juana.
Yep. And Jamaica was called Santiago.
Right. So so he makes his voyage west, and he ends up around Honduras area.
Sure.
And then he starts making his way down the coast to Costa Rica, and then eventually Boca de Toro, then comes up around the top of the isthmus, and then all the way to Nombre de Dios.
Yeah.
And he named those places, and then heads back to Jamaica. But from the time that he arrived in in Panama and stuff. He spent about a year going exploring and stuff. So it
Yeah.
wasn't just like he was just doing a drive by.
Right.
He was there looking.
Right.
He was there looking for gold.
Sure. You're
they
gonna spend
went
some
to-
time.
And I'd love to see his, captain's logs, because they would measure, how fast we're going, how far did we go this day,
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and they would write,
Sure.
stuff
Oh,
in
you
there.
certainly know how long you stopped in Bocas del Toro, for example.
Right,
You
right.
spent a week there, and then you jumped on and continued
Right.
your voyage.
Exactly.
The other thing is you needed favorable weather. It wasn't
Yes.
like you could just crank up the motor and off you go. So they may have been stuck for several more days just because of weather. So, these voyages did take a long time, and not just because they wanted to hang out. It was
Yeah,
kind of
sometimes they got stuck in the doldrums, and you're
Yeah.
just sitting there going nowhere, and then your crew
Yep.
starts mutiny on you. You're running out of water
Right.
and food. So let's go on to the next one. All right, so Columbus arrives in Bocas del Toro somewhat around October 6th to 16th. Don't hold me to that, because it's the resources I found are all over the map.
Right.
But we do know it was October, and we do know it was 1502. So he comes into Bocas del Toro, and I piloted on here. Isla Colon is to the north there,
Yep.
and then Bocas del Toro town is circled in blue. And then down below, there's another island that's called Isla Cristobal.
Yep.
So, you start thinking Isla Cristobal, Isla Colon, Cristobal, Colon. And then over on the left side, Almirante means admiral, and Christopher Columbus was known as the admiral. So, like, he had 4 ships. Each ship had a captain, but he was the admiral over the fleet.
So Laura Smith says that, you could probably find the
Right.
in the logs in Spain. That would be interesting to look
It
at.
would
Good
be,
idea.
yeah, right. I haven't read them, but I will tell you that there was a historian, a very famous historian, that was enamored with Columbus, and he recreated his 4th voyage in a sailing ship, and
Wow.
they went and they verified all the places that he stopped at, and how off was he with his measurements, because he didn't have GPS.
No, certainly not.
And, so they got sometimes they got things wrong, but so this went and did it. But the gentleman that discovered all this information hasn't completed his write-up of that journey. So
That's amazing.
So I'm waiting to read that. But yeah, you're right. Those logs are probably somewhere.
Interesting.
So Almirante is Admiral. So Admiral Columbus, and then Bocas del Toro.
He just named the whole region after him.
Yeah, and Bastamentos means provisions.
Yeah.
So so that'd be a place where you would get supplies or do repairs,
Sure.
stuff like that. So yeah, this whole area is just swimming in Columbus, because he spent some time there. And when we were in Bocas, there's a beach there. It's called Starfish Beach, and it's absolutely beautiful. And there's like a strait between there and the mainland, and I just came from thinking that Columbus was probably sailing a ship through there going down to Almirante and stuff like that. And so it could have been sitting on the beach one day, and all of a sudden the Spanish galleon starts going by and stuff. It's just kind of amazing. But that's a beautiful beach. If you ever get a chance to go there, do it. It's well worth it.
Interesting.
Incredible.
Okay.
So he spent some time here, and you talked about the weather, and when right before he left Jamaica or Hispaniola, there was a hurricane, and he had warned the governor that was there, that was getting ready to go back to Spain, that hey, don't go yet, because there's a hurricane coming, and they didn't like Columbus.
So they thought he was full of shit.
They thought exactly, and actually they wouldn't let him land in Hispaniola. They told him to go to Jamaica.
Wow.
So the ships take off, and they didn't even make it to Puerto Rico, and the hurricane hit them, and there were 30 ships in that flotilla, and 26 sank.
Wow.
But one of the ships that didn't sink was the one that was carrying all of Columbus's gold. So the gold made it back to Spain.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, that's taxes. That ain't going to get lost. Heck.
So they went through this hurricane, and when you read his voyages, they went through hurricanes and bad weather. But he writes in one of his logs that the 9 days that they spent here was some of the worst weather that they had ever experienced, with the wind and the constant rain and the constant deluge of rain and the lightning. This the crew was just about ready to quit. They couldn't take it anymore. But there was no protection really either. So
Right. Yeah,
so,
they weren't prepared for it.
so but they talk about just how bad the weather was for a ship.
That's
And
hilarious.
all that they had gone through, this was like the worst they had ever experienced.
Yeah.
And they had just gone through hurricanes and stuff. So,
Yeah.
So
That's Panama.
when we hear about all like the canal construction and all that stuff, it was awful for these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just miserable.
For sure.
No one talks about Starfish Beach, so it's.
No, it
But
is.
anyway.
I mean, the conditions down there were bad. I mean, it's we grew up down there, but let's face it, we weren't out doing work. Okay,
Yeah.
there was a little bit of maybe some Rams football practice that you thought was bad, but you weren't out there 8-10 hours busting your back out there. Different story.
So the other thing I want to tell you about Columbus is that the king and queen gave Columbus a title. Like
Right.
noble people get a
Sure.
title, and they gave Columbus the title of Duke of Veraguas.
Okay.
So when he came and he landed at Honduras, and then he came along the coast through Bocas and then all the way to Nombre de Dios, that whole area was known as Veraguas.
Oh, not just the area that we
Right.
covered today.
Right.
Okay.
So basically, it went all the way down to Colombia, where the border is there.
Man.
Generally, but
Boy,
so
did they
that
get a lot of
area
their
was
land
known
ripped
as
off.
Veraguas, and it was named after the Duke
Wow, and that was his gig.
Veraguas, which was Christopher Columbus.
Very nice.
And you just throw some other history in. Balboa, when he came to Panama, he discovered the Pacific. He was named governor of Panama, or governor of Veraguas as well. After, yeah. This was in 1513, 1509.
Interesting.
That time frame. This is 1502. But Columbus wasn't the governor. He was,
of course.
right. So Columbus comes and he spends some time in Bocas de Toro.
Yep.
And then he goes down the coast and he stops. He talking to the Indians, and the Indians are wearing gold pieces, and they tell him, "Oh yeah, there's gold up these rivers." So he spends time exploring the Rio Veraguas.
Okay.
And the Rio Belen, and that's the second ship to the left.
Yeah, then the Mosquito Gulf.
Right. And these small rivers, and so they spend some time going up these rivers looking for gold, and they do find some gold. And but that's also where you see on that map that I showed you that Columbus experiences hostile Indians.
Correct.
And they started attacking his men. In fact, a couple of the sailors that were with him were his two brothers and a stepbrother.
Oh wow!
And I believe it was one of his brothers was killed by the natives.
Well, you definitely knew they were serious.
Right. So there are dead Spaniards in that area from that
Interesting.
That visit.
Wow.
So they had to basically pull up anchor and get the hell out of there.
Right.
So then they go down the coast, and so they spent some time there. In fact, one of the stories is that one of their ships had damage, and it was so damaged it ended up being like scuttled, and it like was on its side, and so they were using it as a shelter.
Okay.
And there were like 80 sailors from that ship, and there's some will call it the first European settlement.
Technically, it is.
Technically in America. I mean, it wasn't built to be a town or anything, but they were living there for
It
quite
was a
some
settlement,
time.
nonetheless. Interesting.
Right. Not your traditional shelter, but
No, but hey, you may do with what you had.
right. So then they have to move. They move down the coast, and they eventually come and they drop anchor in the Chagres River mouth. And what's interesting about that, Columbus was looking for the narrow piece of land that you could you could you could find, and so he was always asking where is this path, and you could never really find it. But
In other words, they know there's a Pacific Ocean. They're just trying to find it.
right, and then they hear stories about it, and
Right.
so on this map, it's kind of hard to see. We got another one that goes, but if you followed the old traditional path of the Chagres River, like Will was talking about earlier, it was like a highway, and it would come all the way to like Gorgona, and then it would turn and go up the Chagres River that we know by Gamboa.
And remember, we're not talking Gorgona by the beach.
Right, and there's a hill there. It's called Sierra Balboa in Gorgona, and we'll show some images about that. But from the top of that hill, you can actually see the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans from there. So if Columbus had gone down the Chagres River and trekked up the top of that hill, he would have discovered the Pacific Ocean. So he was
right
really,
there.
really close there.
Yeah.
And I don't know how far up the Chagres River he went or not, but they spent some time there. And then they went and they toured around Manzanillo Island, which is now where Colon is.
Yeah.
And that's why it has the name Colon.
Mm-hmm.
So he at least passed by there. It was a mangrove island, so it wasn't like someplace you would stop. And when you read about the description of that island, being a swamp, remember how when we went by Albrook,
Yeah.
that rise, how it used to smell really bad?
Okay.
That's what I think about when I hear the descriptions about that area. Just a smelly mangrove
Sure.
swamp. And then they moved on to that, and they went to Portobello. It had a nice protected cove.
Yeah.
And so they liked being in that area because it was a safe place for ships to be. And of course, none of the forts were there at that time. These are the first. Well, actually, they find out when they get to Portobello that they're like, "Hey, you're not the first European we've seen." Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, last year, Rodrigo de Bastidas visited us.
Right.
Really?
Because again, news doesn't travel that freely and frequently.
Yeah. Well, Bastidas came. His voyage came. He hit Brazil first. He discovered the Amazon River.
He went east to west, and where
And
Columbus
then
going west to
he came
east.
up the coast, and he made it to Venezuela, and then named Venezuela, basically called it Little Venice.
Oh, interesting.
So that's how Venezuela got its name. And then he traveled up the coast, Panama, and then when he got to about Nombre de Dios, his ship was taken on water because of shipworms, and they're like, we got to make it back to Jamaica.
So I guess shipworms are what? Like they're like the termites of the ocean?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Interesting.
So he didn't make it to Colon. He only made it to Nombre de Dios area.
Wow.
And maybe not if that far. The map says that he only made it to like Punta Manzanillo or something like that, which is a little bit further east than Nombre de Dios. But some of the books say they think he may have made it that far. But he didn't name that cove like Columbus did. So Columbus named Portobello. He named Nombre de Dios, and it was like, thank God we're here. We found a place.
Right.
So that's why that's called there. But Cologne was named after him. He didn't name it Cologne, but they named it.
Sure.
So all right, let's go on to the next one. So going back to Bocas de Toro, some little bit of trivia I found is that one of the first Afro descendants to be European royalty is from Bocas de Toro.
How about that?
and she's married to like the Prince of Liechtenstein. I don't know if he's still Prince. This is an older article. I
Yeah,
didn't
well,
look it
this
up,
is in
but I just came
2000. It says.
I just came across that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
There you go, Angela
So,
Brown from Bocas del
mhm,
Toro.
there's a European princess, so like Princess Kate there. Over there.
How about that? How about that?
So this is a blow up of the old Chagres River. You know, this is just a assimilation. You know, the river is a lot more windy than this, but
Yeah, absolutely.
essentially, it starts on the coast there, West Bank, where the canal is, and then it. Can you go back? All right. And then where Gatun Lake is now, it followed that direction, and then when it gets to Gorgona, where Gorgona was, it was there probably was an Indian village there because this was like the highway back then. And then the Chagres River traveled north past Gamboa up to Madden, where Madden Dam is, and then right there is where Cerro Balboa is. And so, like I said, if Columbus had followed that river, probably in a rowboat, not in a ship, he might have been able to discover the Pacific.
I think I have a image here. Hang on, let me look for this image real quick because it'll show the Chagres River before the canal. Hang on, let me pull that up. I got it here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Okay. Where's that map?
But it's kind of interesting to think about Columbus just hanging out at the mouth of the Chagres River.
Right.
And, his whole fleet. And now you can go to Fort San Lorenzo, and like, again, you could go there and you could think, at some point,
Yeah, I don't know.
Not during that time, there wasn't a fort there, but you could look out and you would see these 4 ships sitting out there. And it might have been something amazing. We know that Cologne is named after Columbus, but I never really thought about him being there.
Right.
Checking around. He probably spent more time on the Atlantic side than I did.
So, yeah, here it is real quick. This is the Chagres River. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can see, where it would turn in, and some parts of it there, you can see where it does turn into what would be then Gamboa. Yeah, I mean, there was a town Gatun later on there, but that, that river flowed through that area, and there was a lowland area there where now would be Gatun Lake.
Yeah.
And so they just dammed it up, and the river just basically overflowed.
Well, and the other part, coming in from La Boca, you had the Rio Grande, and it kind of came and met
Correct.
up with the Chagres. I don't think they connected, actually, but, you could have easily got on the Rio Grande and made it.
And probably, if you're talking about that hill, you could see both sides, and
Exactly.
somebody could easily recognize, hey, you know
Right.
what? I could visualize a waterway behind me and in front of me here.
Right.
And that's your
But,
first
yeah,
visions of
but-
a canal.
Yeah, you would have seen the Rio Grande and from that distance.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So he came really close to discovering the Pacific, and that would have been, a history-changing thing.
And
'cause
it's odd that he didn't take that path because that Chagres River was a pretty good-sized river.
Yeah,
You would
right.
assume that would be an area to get interior and find either gold or that narrow passage he was looking for.
So that's where it would be interesting to see the logs to find out what the heck was happening. Why didn't he do it, or did he go
Sure.
and just turned? If they had just gone one more step. So this is actually the entrance to the Chagres River.
Yeah.
Now there's Fort San Lorenzo. Of course, that was built in 1680.
Yeah, that wasn't there
1680.
when he's there.
Yeah, it wasn't there. So it would have just been like this point on the bottom, just covered in trees.
Right.
But you can see the Chagres River is pretty straight right there, and
Yeah.
so there's this 4 ships, just out. I don't know if they were anchored right there, but that water's pretty deep. So they probably were, so that, one day you probably could have seen that in 1502.
Certainly.
And so I'm sure when they went like Rio Belen and Rio Veraguas up the river, if they had taken one of their like tender boats and rowed up that river, far
Absolutely.
enough, they may have gone. But they may have told them, look, you got 2 nights, go up and then tell me what you see. And so they may have only made it to like Mamé area, and And if
Yeah.
they had just gone another day, they would have found it.
Yep. It's amazing how, the perspective was so different back then. You were limited to basically what your eyes
Right.
could see and nothing more.
Yeah, because it's 50 miles,
Yeah.
But I guess to Gamboa it's probably only like 30 miles. So
Which is still a substantial amount
Yeah.
back in those days.
right, but if you only go 25, that's still not 5 miles far enough. So.
Right. Right.
So they came really, really close. And then this is Balboa, Cerro Balboa, and so the old town Gorgona on the right side. My grandmother, when she was born, this is the town that she lived in, Gorgona, and now you can see in the left side, the town is underwater in the canal.
Yeah.
But you could still see the hill because it's like a mile or two away from the canal, but it's there. And
I mean, that's almost
where
the exact
Seattle-
same perspective because even the
Seattle-
background behind those trees, you can see
Yeah.
the smaller hill to the left.
You
there.
know what? Will, if you look at those two trees
Mhm.
that are there, one that kind of has some tree leaves on it and the other
Yeah.
one doesn't. And you look at these two trees in the foreground and the one on the right,
Yeah.
you can see like that first tree, it has like a little bend to the right
Sure does.
and stuff. And it's like, God dang, are those the same two trees? Those are just babies, and the other ones are like 70, 80 years later.
Well, and time-wise, it would make sense,
Yeah.
because it would take a
So-
good 30, 40 years to get to that size. And
So
then
it-
obviously,
Yeah, it would make sense that those were those
Yeah.
trees are the same, man. I mean, it's possible.
Certainly
It's
is.
just kind of uncanny that they're that close, and then same perspective and stuff. They may
Right.
not be, but
certainly the
but
hills give it the perspective that's
Yeah.
certainly the right angle.
right. But when you read the old Canal records and stuff, people talk about going up to Balboa Hill and going up to the platform.
Yeah.
And so I found on Canals on Images, they've got such great stuff on there, man.
Yeah. They really do.
It's like I find something I think it's unique, and then I go on there and like, yeah, I've been there, done that. It's like, all right,
Right.
they already found it and have the story, and it's like, gosh, they're really good. So thank you guys for posting all this stuff. It's really wonderful to see sharing it. But
Yeah.
there was the platform, and you can see it was kind of rickety, and there's
Right.
a lower and an upper platform, but people would go there and they would watch, the sunrise, sunset, and you always hear rise in the Atlantic and set in the Pacific, and then you
Yeah.
could see the two oceans. So it was something to do. There wasn't a whole lot to do, but
Right.
going up to the platform and looking at the two oceans was something that probably everyone for Gorgona did, at
Certainly.
least once.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that my grandmother was born, so she probably didn't do that, but I would imagine her father did. My great grandfather went up there a couple times.
Yeah,
and
I
my
would think so.
Great-great-grandfather went up there. He might have even built it, but
Well, and imagine when we were talking previously, when you were talking about the building of the canal, how
Mhm.
many of the surveyors were on that platform there, perhaps looking in, because again, you're getting a great visual
Right.
of both sides.
right.
That's impressive.
But this is one of the things that I think about. That how come we don't have a platform there today?
Right.
know,
A legit platform.
A
because
legit
that's gotta
platform.
be a great tourist spot.
Wouldn't you think? I'd like to charge somebody $2 to go up there.
Heck yeah. And that would be a selling point. Do you want to see the Atlantic and Pacific at the same
Yeah,
time? This is the
exactly.
only place in the world you can do that other than down in South America.
How about having an Airbnb up there to do that? I mean, just
Right.
something. You probably watch birds and monkeys and all that other stuff there too. So, but
Absolutely.
but it's right next to the canal, so they couldn't have. We weren't allowed to have concessions.
Right.
I mean, if it wasn't necessary to run the canal, we weren't allowed. You just asked, wasn't that the issue with the Betamax shops?
Yeah.
I mean, there was no purpose for the canal to have a Betamax shop. I mean,
Correct.
We think that that's un-American. It's like, well, it's not allowed by the treaty. So,
Right.
Um,
right.
but it's those types of things. So
They may do.
The Spanish were colonizers.
Yeah.
I don't know that you could put us in that same category. But
No,
you
and
always hear it.
It's funny you mentioned that because lately I've been watching a lot of videos on Panama
Yeah.
history, but from Panamanians. They're in
Yeah.
Spanish, and that is a big theme with a lot of them.
Yeah.
Is the colonial Americans,
Right.
and I'm thinking the same thing you are. I'm not sure it was really a colonizing thing because we weren't in there establishing your government and telling it how to run. We were running our canal, and we just cut a deal with you saying, hey, you get independence, we get a canal, and we'll protect you. Done.
And for the most part, basically, the stuff that was built in the 50s and 60s, that's the last of it. And it was only enough for the people that worked there to run the thing.
Correct.
So
yeah, there was no expansion. There
yeah.
was no reaching in across the border to tell them what to do, at least not officially.
Right. And, so there were, I mean, again,
it was far from colonial.
Yeah, but the other ones were like, let's send people over, let's send more people over, let's send more people over, let's set up colonies and
and because you could get something out of it. Right.
So,
we weren't taking any resources out of Panama. We were just using the canal.
It was a run the canal, and I think you look back at it, you could probably say, oh well, this wasn't exactly needed either. Like Smithsonian, you hear about that wasn't needed, and all these types of things. But for the most part, I think around the edges, that the only things that were there were to run the canal or protect the canal.
100%. It was
an
efficient operation as best as they could make it.
Right, and none of us own those houses. We were just being leasing it from the U.S. government. And a colony, you would be able to own your own stuff and create your own business. So,
in fact, they'd encourage that so you could really gain control of that region.
Right. But I thought that was interesting, that platform.
It was. It was really cool.
We talked about Rodrigo de Bastida. He was the discoverer of Panama, and that was in 1501. And so his route came, past Venezuela, and he came up, and this is showing him just going. This shows him going to Portobello, but he may or may not have gone that far.
Right.
But he may have made it to Nombre de Dios and gone. But you can see him that he all of a sudden went north to Jamaica, and what I read was that because he had shipworms and the ship was taking on water and they needed to repair.
And the thought is Panama ain't going to fix it.
Yeah, we can't fix it. We can't fix it here. We need to go to the Jiffy
to the closest port that you can do it.
Exactly. So so he's credited for discovering Panama just about a year before Columbus. And again, Columbus came the other way. When he gets to Portobello and stuff, they're like, yeah, we've already seen white man. Like, what are you talking about? So,
where do you think I got this?
Yeah.
A coin or something.
But Bastidas had been one of Christopher Columbus's sailors on previous journeys, and one of the three other ones and stuff. So,
and what's interesting is like you mentioned, he was on one of his crews. Balboa was. You even mentioned last night when we were chatting. Wasn't it Pizarro? Yeah,
Pizarro.
So fascinating that all these guys were part of that same. Fraternity of explorers and adventurers, and they carried on from there, All
right, so this was Columbus. This probably should have been earlier in this, but when he got to Belen, he's this image is showing him like meeting with the natives that he found, and they're telling them, there's gold here. A lot of times what I've heard is that the natives would tell people, the gold is just down the way. So get out of here and go find it somewhere else.
Not here, down there.
Not here. It's just down. Just go that way. And so that was what I've heard is one way that the Indians were able to get them to leave them alone, is to tell them that the gold was just, down the street.
I mean, I got to imagine for these, these natives, when you see a ship like that and these guys get off there, it's got to be intimidating. I mean, they have nothing close to the size of these ships, even though they're out there anchored out there. That's still big enough that you can see, man, these guys got something going on here. Yeah.
And you probably didn't have the concept of UFO, but it probably is that same type of thing. It's like, this is out of this world. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, those big sails and stuff. What is that?
And then the guns and stuff like that. And they had horses too sometimes, and these were things. But you can see in this image too, the one ship there is really close to the land, and it looks like it's kind of sinking.
Oh yeah, and unless that you know what I say, it looks like it's just a boarding party getting on one of the.
Yeah, I think this is the area where the ship was scuttled. And, and they spent some time there, and then it could be these same Indians were the ones that got tired of them. And
you're welcome.
Exactly. So, but this is one of the first pictures I saw of Columbus actually on Panama soil that I found.
That was it's interesting because again, like you said, we just thought of Colón as just another town, you didn't really start looking at it at that connection and how deep it was and what Columbus meant to the country.
Right. And I
You know,
never realized that he went around and got off the ship and went exploring around and
spent time
found-
there.
right. And
Yeah.
took gold back to Spain.
Sure. Sure. Well, and to your point, by this fourth voyage, he had a lot of gold to recoup because he had gotten ripped off blind the first time.
Yeah, I don't know if he ever got it back though, but because
Yeah, I would think it'd probably be
didn't live
difficult.
much longer though. But anyway,
No, that was fascinating.
so what else do we got here?
That's where we're at now, and
Right.
because again we're a lot of information there, a lot of good stuff, and again, guys, we're getting that context of where it all started before we even got to the point of building a canal.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can see, a passage back and forth was already being looked at. Right, the thought of it was already there. Even these guys had heard rumors that there's another big ocean on the other side. So Panama had become a strategic place, just like the canal is certainly strategic now. But I mean, you're talking a long time ago. So it's a lot of fascinating stuff there on this history of
Navy
Columbus
Bay.
and what it meant to all of us here eventually, and why Cologne and that name has become synonymous. And whatnot.
I see someone put in the chat Navy Bay, and that's the Cologne Harbor area that has been also referred to as Navy Bay. And so
Okay.
sometimes when you read stuff, you'll read about Navy Bay, and you're like, where the heck is that? But
Okay.
but
Yeah,
that
kind of like
area-
with what, and you're going to talk about it. We just didn't have enough time, but we'll get it on the next go around. Is Aspinwall, right?
Aspinwall, right?
So several different names get thrown around, and sometimes it's depending on who owns it
Yeah,
and whatnot.
yeah.
But
And Pacific side, we had Port Ancon, which was
Yeah.
the anchorage off the Causeway Islands. That area was called Port Ancon. You talked about Ancon Hill and
yeah,
the cove. So
and
like,
the
where was that? But that's before there was a canal where they dredged it so ships could get close to the shore there. They had to anchor out in Panama Bay, and that was called Port Ancon.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's like Amador. We had Fort Grant and Fort Amador.
Oh,
So a
yeah.
lot. And then like tonight we learned Fort Elliott. Later on became Fort Gaylord.
I've got a correction to make. Will had posted about this picture. What's the name of this place? And you had said Fort Grant, and I said no, it's Fort Amador. So I went and researched that, and what I found out was that the U.S. had actually named Amador Fort Grant at the beginning, and they had told the President Amador that they were going to name one of the batteries on the islands after him.
Okay.
So it'd be, Battery Amador. They have a cannon up there.
Right.
And the article I read said that his wife said, "That's so disrespectful. He needs a better,
Yeah, we need more than
more
a battery.
prominent position." And so they're like, "Yeah, I guess you're right. So we'll name the base after Amador, and then they left the islands Grant."
Okay, so they still
So
kept a piece of it.
Yeah. So for a number of years it was called Fort Grant, and then they renamed
Interesting.
the dredged area essentially
Sure.
as Fort Amador.
Fort Amador.
And that was basically to pay respects. But that goes another, one of those things is kind of like an unforced error, where you kind of people are feeling disrespected.
Certainly.
And there may or may not have been any intent to that, but still doesn't matter. It
Absolutely.
happens.
Well,
So,
and you think of the canal operation, like you said, previously, early on, that was a military operation.
Yeah.
And the military is not about, pomp and circumstance. They're about getting stuff done in a machine-like manner. And so we're just going to call it Fort Grant, done. And well, they're like, wait a minute, we got President Amador. He's the first president of this country that we just formed together. And what do you do for him? We're going to name a battery after him. Well, that made logic to the staff meeting in the base there, but to the Panamanian people, they're like, whoa, man, a little bit more here.
Goethals was a general, or colonel.
It was all based on logic. The
It was
military
all-
does
it was
everything on
military.
logic, not on any kind of emotion or festivities.
Right.
So
So you read about those things, but that was one of the I didn't realize that. I had seen maps that showed Amador, and then the dividing line for Grant over at the where the Officers Club is, where the causeway starts. But I didn't
Yeah.
realize that that's how it didn't start out that way.
Yeah. And it's
But then,
fascinating to see the other day, seeing those pictures that it does start to grow out, and those batteries didn't have any prominence until they built the causeway, because it wouldn't really make sense to have a battery that you have to get out there by ship. It's just going to be too hard to maintain and support, and so the base grew and it evolved into all of that stuff.
yeah, so that's something I wanted to correct, and
Right on.
that I didn't know, and it's not really well explained
Sure.
that way.
Well, that's what it's interesting that we're one of the things I guess we're accomplishing here is we're learning a lot more things. I find myself doing more reading on Panama and Canal's own history now than I've ever done in my life, to bring stuff to the show, which I love that it's happening, because I'm adding so much to my, I love history and I love geography, and so it's great to learn some more of that stuff there.
All right. Well, someone's making a recommendation of
I saw that
YouTube channel, so yeah, I'll check that out. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much history. I mean, we talk about it for an hour or more here, but we're just scraped the surface of all the stuff that's there.
100%, absolutely. No, and
So
that's
I'm
what
sorry
makes it
if I
fun to be.
drone on about some of this stuff, but there is a lot of
No, it's not
history.
at all, dude. I think it's fast. People love to hear this stuff. It's fascinating. It's great information, and it's a place that we all can recognize. When you throw those names out there, we know where those places were, and in many cases we've been there. So it's fun to be part of that history, because we are part of that history, and it's great to see where it all started, not just our history in the 60s and 70s and 80s. This goes way back, and it was in the same place. So Panama's had a lot of prominence in the world for half a millennium, man. It's amazing. It really is. So, but listen, so Dave, so what are we thinking for November then? What do you got in stock for us there, in store for us there?
Well, I think what we'll probably do is try to finish the stuff that obviously we would have gone way long tonight if we tried to get all that in. So we'll probably pick up on some of that stuff. We'll talk about Cologne and Aspinwall.
Yeah.
About the the construction of that and how that came to be, and I also want to talk about at this time, 1915. We're still kind of in the 1950 end of the construction era. I want to talk about the Panama Pacific Exposition that took place in San Francisco in 1915, and it was all about the Panama Canal, and also the rebirth of San Francisco after their earthquake. But there's a lot of interesting things about that, and maybe Ricky can join us next time. And
oh yeah, he'll be here.
I've got some ideas to send him on a field visit to go check out some of these places.
Very cool. Yeah, that was amazing what you showed me there last night. Absolutely, just really cool looking facilities they have there, and that detail, that one diorama you talked about, the canal, fascinating to see, especially the size of it.
And I do want to talk about some of the Atlantic side stuff. We'll talk about Aspinwall and stuff, but there was an old Gatun, like we talked about, the old La Boca and stuff on the Pacific side, but there was also some stuff on the Atlantic side. We don't really talk a lot about the Atlantic side, mainly because we went there on scouts and for football jamborees and over there, but didn't.
Yeah, we didn't run those streets.
We didn't run the street there. Yeah, we didn't. We don't know it. So, but I'd like to learn more. I'm learning more about it, and I want to share some things that I think are just interesting to pass on. And hopefully, I'll learn more about the Gatun that people that watch this show know about and love, and everyone that I talk to about it they always say that the otro lado is better, right?
Otro lado.
So we'll actually learn the history of that too next show. So the next show will be titled Otra Lado.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. So what does Michael say? Hi, Michael. Good to see you again. Early military U.S. needed a way for our West and East naval force to reinforce U.S. Yeah, absolutely. No, and I'll tell you, when we start getting towards the 50s, okay, when Dave gets to that point in our history, we're going to revisit some of what we talked about tonight, okay? Because we talked about Eisenhower, and of course, he had that Zonian connection. All that stuff's really cool. But in the pure sense of a Zonian and the sense of disappointment at losing what is so special to us, you'll find out that Eisenhower played a role in that, we think, or whatnot. But that's for a future show. But interesting that you're talking about that now, Michael, because that did change eventually as things became more modern and there was less of that need. But I'm not gonna step on Dave's toes here for that. But that really is an interesting aspect of Ike.
Yeah, right. And the last show we talked about the Lexington going through the canal and knocking over the lights. The ships
Right.
are already too big.
And that aircraft carrier today would be like a personnel carrier. It's nothing compared to what you have now.
Exactly. So the canal, it served a purpose, like you mentioned in it, to move those ships through, and it did. It moved a lot of ships, but then the ships got way too big, and then we had a two ocean navy. And then there's also discussion about could the canal be protected, and we'll learn about attempts to sabotage the canal in future shows at some point. There's just so much information.
For sure. Well, and people have always talked about, well, the canal was self-sufficient, and that's an argument that we can take up. The canal operation itself may have been self-sufficient, but it didn't pay for those military bases, I guarantee you. I guarantee that was a completely separate Pentagon budget. And, so you get to the point where as militaries start to modernize and realize that, hey, I don't need all of these things we have here, and I'd rather spend that money elsewhere, that suddenly the canal was something that sooner than we realized, sooner than even we were alive, a lot of us, was already being talked about, hey, when are we going to wind this thing down? And so, but again, we're getting into a future tale. We've got a lot more canals on history before we get to that point where Ike was doing that. So, because there's a lot of stuff. I'm really interested to see what life became, let's say, around after 1920 to World War II. That's when the zone was really starting to kick in and become a regular established community, and the canal was now something semi-permanent, not so much a construction or post-construction. It was now a community.
Right. Well, if you can recall when we talked about Balboa and the houses that were being built, the plans say plans for permanent towns.
Right.
Because all these canal towns like Gorgona and Empire and Camp Elliott, they were all temporary work camps.
Sure.
Really.
Keep the workforce close.
Yeah, they weren't they were building houses as fast as they could just to get people, a roof over their head, but they weren't intended.
And then moving them.
Well, you can see some of them, they ended up underneath the canal because they weren't intended to be permanent.
No, they were just, they didn't want to have to bus people 40 miles every day to go and work. So they had you living right next to your construction, and then months later you would move and it would move with it.
Right. And we talked about originally the canal was going to be sea level canal, and you wouldn't have all those people for the locks, the 3 locks. And so, Balboa was built for the port and Pedro McGill, and town was built there to run that locks, and Gatun was built to maintain that lock. So those were the rationale for building those permanent town sites. But if you looked at the original plans, they wouldn't be there. And Balboa was going to be a lake,
right?
At one point, Albrook would be a lake, Lake Miraflores. But
so many moments in life that you could go one way or another, and it could just change so many things. Earlier tonight you're talking about, hey, Columbus was right there. He may have gone down the Chagres and maybe changed how things took place in Panama, which may have changed where we were at and where Balboa would have been, and things of that nature. So it's always fascinating to see how history is constantly hitting crossroads. And if
the Spanish could have built that canal,
100%.
Right.
100%.
And Panama would have never claimed independence.
Never, ever. And for that matter, they may have even been a Grand Columbia.
Yeah.
It would have. Right. So it's just interesting. And you know what? Hey, for whatever reason, it happened the way it did. Thank the Lord for that. And I think we are special people for whatever reason, because we've had a lot of unique people be Zonian. So I think there's something special and unique about the Zonian way. So,
well, it's really interesting too. It's Columbus Day coming up. A lot of people will be celebrating it, but I think you look back, Columbus didn't even go to like North America, so why are they celebrating it really? You know,
Right.
but we can in Panama saying, hey,
We actually have a legit claim.
we have a legit claim, right?
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
But you know, where did he stop? You can't go to like Belen necessarily and see like a monument or something to that.
Right.
Or nobody.
You know, there is no, and this was one that you may want to look into in your research, because I know that there was, I believe it was a university in Texas sent a team down to find one of his ships that apparently had sunk in maybe Fort San Lorenzo. That I'm not sure where it is, but you know, off the air we can talk about it later. But that might be a great episode to do one day, or a segment to do on you know where that ship was and stuff, and for our folks that are in Panama now to help us find it and all. But anyway, that's you know for a future show. Dave, again, thank you so much. We love having you on. You know for our monthly history, our historian, non-historian Dave Dahlstrom. So.
All right.
Much appreciated. Thanks for helping me
All right.
ad-lib this without Ricky. But
everybody,
you know,
go watch the Fun House Halloween.
Yes.
And play some Barracuda.
Yeah, there you go. So we have some Zonian celebrities that we're gonna honor and watch this week and check them out. So cool. But anyway, Dave, thanks a lot, man. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll talk to you in another month or so, man.
All right, thank you.
See you, man. All right, guys. So listen, great show. I have a lot, not that I didn't before, but I love having you know my co-host on. I do miss him, man, because it was tough running the whole thing myself. It's nice to have that break, but nonetheless, Dave certainly made it a lot easier for me because he had a lot of great stuff that you know for us to present and chit chat about. But a lot of respect for anybody that does solo shows, man, because that was kind of interesting. But nonetheless, guys, again, thank you so much. Next week, don't forget Jerry Curtis, Panama Motocross Adventures are going to be coming on. We're really looking forward to that. A lot of good stuff there. And again, thanks for joining us. Any ideas you guys have? Let us know what your thoughts are. You know what we can do to improve the show. We're gonna get some football shows going here. Probably in 2 weeks, we're looking to get a Albrook Jets show. We've got a Kiwani show in the works now. I've got several Kiwanis. We've started a group and we're chatting and getting some stuff going. So that's going to be a lot of fun, especially again now that we have a lot more of that Panama component on here as well. So really excited for that. Again, guys, stay tuned next week. My brother Ricky will be back, and you know, so enjoy his and bring that Bochinche segment back. But otherwise, again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate the chats on there. Everybody say hello, spread the word, make sure you like and share, and you know, get us more people watching. Get us on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Daniel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the kind words from everybody. Michael, the Duprees. We had the whole Dupree family on again. Frank, great seeing you on again as well. Dodd, Jason. A lot of fun stuff here, guys. Looking forward to next week's show. Thanks again, guys. 8 p.m. Friday nights, happy hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Cheers.